Welcome to Clearly Defined Types of Certificates with CTDL webinar. Thank you for joining us today. I am Jeannie Kitchens, Chief Technology Services Officer with Credential Engine, and I am joined by some of my colleagues here at Credential Engine, Jared Diener, our State Partnerships Manager, Nate Argo, Solutions Architect, Bill Barker, a CTDL consultant to Credential Engine and longtime partner, and Rachel Vilsack, our Chief Operating Officer. This webinar is being recorded and we will send it out to everyone who registered, and it will also go up on our YouTube channel after this meeting. And for those of you who may be new to Credential Engine or just need a reminder, we are a nonprofit and our mission is to map the credential landscape with clear and consistent information so we can empower people to find the pathways best for them. And we do that through a number of programs and through our technologies. And today we are going to be talking about how we support our mission through better guidance for everyone using the Credential Registry publishing system. And on our agenda today, we will talk a little bit about the origins of the CTDL certificates that have been added to the CTDL and to the publishing system. And we will go over some of those certificate types, how they got to be the way they are today. And then Rachel is going to cover, well, prior to that, we're going to have Nate talk about consuming certificate data from the registry. And then Rachel will talk about all the publishing options through our publishing system and do a demonstration. And just to lay a little bit more context here, this slide shows a high-level overview of our technologies, and the credential transparency description language is foundational to all the work that we do here at Credential Engine. So when we're talking about these new CTDL terms, they are part of that language now, and we have an entire suite of publishing tools for converting information into CTDL linked open data structure. And we're going to be going over how we are now supporting publishing many different types of certificates as CTDL using these publishing tools to the Credential Registry. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Credential Registry, the best way to learn more about it is through the Credential Finder. It's a tool for seeing all of the data in the Credential Registry, and we'll be sharing that URL with you during this webinar as well. And that data in the registry is for other systems, applications, mobile apps, learner and employment records to utilize that valuable data. And just one more little bit of background about Credential Engine and the CTDL. This image shows you the depth and breadth of the credential transparency description language. The CTDL is a large language and it is meant for linking data together. So what this image is meant to communicate to everyone is that, for example, you can publish certificates as type of credentials, and you can link that type of information to jobs, to competencies, to assessments, to learning programs and courses, and you can describe these things in a great level of detail, granularity. All of these classes here are supported in the Credential Registry and through our publishing system and available for anyone to use the credential transparency description language. And finally, the CTDL is available for anyone to use under an open Creative Commons license. For those of you who want to really do a deep dive into it, we have a lot of information on our technical site, and you can always contact us with any questions that you have, but we do encourage you to use CTDL with your tools and systems. And then just talk a little bit about the origins of the CTDL certificates. So the CTDL has been updated to expand to 22 additional types of certificates. This is in addition to numerous types of credential terms that were already a part of the CTDL. And I also want to mention, and I think Rachel's going to talk a little bit more about this a little later in the webinar, that when we expand the CTDL and by adding these types of certificates, it does call for reviewing data that may be published to the registry already, or data that you have and that you're going to publish to the registry, to make sure that you're mapping it to the right type of credential. So that's what that little sentence at the bottom there is referring to. There's a lot of opportunity to really improve the alignment of this information to characterize those credentials, and in this case, types of certificates, in a far more accurate and meaningful and helpful manner. So the benefits of utilizing the CTDL certificates terms and all those other CTDL terms that you saw on the prior slide is keeping in mind that it is a common language. Every single term in the CTDL, so all of the certificates that you will hear about today are defined. And they support linking across other classes, so you can link to assessments, for example, and describe them in a great deal of detail, including cost, financial assistance, time to complete, and so forth, and also link that information to competencies. So these are just some examples of the benefits. And the way that the CTDL was updated with these new certificate terms is through a tried and true process that we have been managing over many years. Our first implementation of the CTDL was back in 2017. And we have policies that we follow. We have a schema update process. We have a namespace policy. If you want to dig into them, you're welcome to take a look at our policies. And through those policies, we form task groups, and these are subject matter experts who get together and help us define these terms, and they follow a process, and we have completed the task group for certificates, and that was followed by a public comment period, and that was followed by implementation by the Credential Engine team. So this is a process that we consistently follow, and now we're concluding that process by launching the publishing tools to make CTDL certificate data available to everyone. And I am going to pass it over to Jared to talk a little bit more about the CTDL certificates task group.
Thank you, Jeannie. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about the origins of the task group and how our work unfolded. The task group was formed in early October of last year, and we had heard from a number of stakeholders and partners over the years about the need to be able to identify certificates in the registry with a bit more detail and specificity, and thinking in particular about additional types of industry, vocational, career, technical, secondary, and post-secondary certificates. So with that in mind, we brought together 53 subject matter experts from a variety of fields, ranging from education, government, licensing, certification, training, and other areas. And our purpose was to consider how certificates are defined in CTDL, and then to make any proposals necessary to update the CTDL model with additional types of certificates so that it accurately represents the ecosystem's needs. And here on this slide, you can see the charter for the task group, which set out the goals of the group and our scope of work. Next slide, please. So the task group met a total of 7 times from October to January. And during this time, we conducted extensive research and gathered a lot of documentation about different types of credentials that are offered in different contexts. We developed use cases that would support the creation of some new certificate terms. And then we analyzed these use cases to draft a proposal that outlined a new CTDL domain model and these new certificate terms. We gathered input on the proposal from a broad range of stakeholders and partners. We held an open public webinar on January 31st to invite comment and feedback on the new terms proposal. And then we finalized the proposal and moved to implement the new CTDL terms in our systems and documentation. So that's a little bit about the process that led to the creation of these new certificate types. Now I will turn it over to Phil Barker to talk in more detail about the new CTDL certificate terms. Phil.
Thank you, Jared. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Because I want to start by showing all of the different credential types that are covered in CTDL, just to reassure you that if you don't see something as a certificate, the chances are it's covered somewhere else. So if, for example, you're interested in certifications or licenses or micro-credentials or badges, and you're wondering how those fit under the certificates that we're talking about today, the answer is they don't. It might be that some of what can be called a micro-credential also fits under a particular type of certificate, in which case feel free to call it a certificate if it meets the definition for the certificate you're thinking of, but you're not constrained to doing that. If something you're offering, for example, as a micro-credential, doesn't meet the definition that we have for a certificate, you can still call it a micro-credential. The other thing that I want to highlight here is that our credential types form a hierarchy. Those types that are highlighted in green are the top levels of the hierarchy: certificate, degree, diploma, badge, certification, license, micro-credential, quality assurance. And the other more specific types, for example, of certificate, fall underneath the general heading of a certificate. And when it comes to classifying the credentials that you're interested in, if you have something that is a certificate and it doesn't meet one of the specific types of certificate that we have, you can still classify it as a certificate. Likewise, if you have an academic certificate and it doesn't meet one of the specific types of subtypes of academic certificate that we list underneath academic certificate there, you can still classify it as an academic certificate. So those two things taken together, you know, the fact that not everything needs to be a certificate and the fact that you can classify something at any level within this hierarchy, means that we're fairly confident that we've got some pretty thorough coverage of the credential area. Next slide, please, which is just to highlight what we're going to be talking about, what we're focusing on in this presentation, the certificates. And the reason why we went to the trouble of adding certificates to setting up the working group that Jared just described is that previously we covered degrees in quite a lot of detail, but we didn't have very much coverage of certificates. And if you go on to the next slide, you'll see what's changed. The slides that are highlighted in the sort of peachy color are new. These are all of the different types of certificate that we added as a result of this working group. The slides that are in blue are ones that we modified as a result of the work that we did in the working group. The only slide that wasn't modified, sorry, the only certificate that wasn't modified or is completely new, actually everything moved around it, so it's not in quite the same place in the hierarchy as it was before. One of the changes that we made that resulted in that is that certificates no longer have to certify that somebody has learnt something. This means that certificate of completion, which just means that somebody completed a program of some sort, say, or a task. That now comes under the heading of certificate, whereas it didn't previously, which was kind of odd. So that's why we made that change to the definition of certificate. I am not going to go through the definition of everything that's listed here. Could somebody put in the chat, please, the link to the page that lists all of the definitions so that people can see sort of in their own time or in parallel to me speaking what the definitions are for all of these. What I shall do is I'll highlight some of the important ones, or some of the ones where based on just the name you may be thinking, what's the difference there? The difference between certificate of completion and certificate of participation is one that we've been asked about. And it is quite literally in the name. Participation means that you're participating in some activity, some program, some course maybe. Completion means that you've completed it. The reason why it's important to distinguish between the two is because in some circumstances, things like student visas, for example, depend on you participating in a particular program. And so it can be necessary to issue a certificate that says that somebody is participating in this program or this event, and therefore that entitles them to something else. But it would be incorrect to say that they've completed the program, and maybe even misleading. That might even remove the entitlement from them. So we have certificate of participation for that reason. Professional certificates cover a whole range of things that we've seen where organizations which are not often academic organizations and are not work-based learning organizations are providing certificates to say that you are proficient in some tool or technique or methodology. So these might include things like the Cisco certification, for example, or that you're able to use a particular Microsoft product or use a particular program, project management technique. And where these meet our definition of certificate, they would be a professional certificate. The alternative is that they might be a certification, and the distinction there is that certifications are time limited, whereas professional certificates are not time limited. They last for as long as the product is available. Proficiency certificates are slightly different because they're not necessarily related to a professional setting. So these can be things like language proficiency or musical proficiency in a particular instrument, where I'm not saying that you have a level of proficiency that allows you to become a professional linguist, a translator, for example, or professional musician, but you are proficient in that language, that instrument, that activity, whatever it is. Work-based learning certificates are clearly an important class of certificates, and that's where the certificates that we had before, the apprenticeship, journeyman, and master trade certificates fit. But as well as those, there are various certificates that are offered through academic programs at different levels, secondary level, basic level, or for different types of subjects. So technical level is a technical a technical certificate at level 1, level 2, or level 3 is a specialist certificate in a specialist subject, whereas a general education certificate at level 1 or level 2 are what they say, general, not a specific technical subject. Higher education certificates, post-baccalaureate certificates, postmaster certificates relate to certificates that can be learnt generally, that can be earned for education at those levels. I see the question from Marilyn, where does a graduate certificate fall? If you look at the definitions that you have, you'll see that we have defined the levels in terms of IPEDS levels. So I hope that answers the question generally. Have a look at the definition for the very specific answer. If we move on to the next slide, we'll see the other thing that we added, the other property in this case, or class that we added. No, property, and there is a related class. For the apprenticeship certificates, it's important to know whether the apprenticeship is registered or not. And so we have a property, a new property, to indicate whether something is a registered apprenticeship. And on the next slide, we see a related class for that, which is the registration action class, which gives you the information about the registration of the apprenticeship. And if we move on to the next slide, this is where we are in the implementation. We've defined the new terms in CTDL. We've added them to the vocabulary. We've added information in the handbook about how we see them being used. And this means that we are ready to implement data using those new properties and new classes, which moves us on to the next section, which is Nate, I believe, talking about how to use the data that's published.
All right. So we've got several methods for getting data into the system. No matter which one you use, it all winds up in the registry eventually as JSON LD. The first one that we kind of recommend is the Publishing Assistant API. That provides a way for your system to take data directly out of its database and provide it to us using a simplified version of CTDL that we then convert and put into the registry. The next one is manual entry, which, as the name implies, is basically filling out a web form. That's good for organizations that have a very small amount of data. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do that if you have a lot of stuff. If you do have a lot of stuff, the next option may be good for you, a CSV bulk upload. So this is where you would take your information, you would put it into a spreadsheet that is formatted in a way that we specify, and we can tell you all about that if you're interested in it. You would then upload that to our system, and again, we'll put it into the registry. One of our newer tools is the badge publisher. So this is for open badges. We have tooling that allows you to take data from an open badge, convert it to CTDL, and publish it. We also have a fairly new tool, the pathway builder. So if you have data that specifically is structured for to be a pathway, you can also use that pathway builder. It's an interactive UI for constructing a pathway, and that will also allow you to publish your data to the registry. Next slide, please. And then to get the data back out of the registry, whether it's yours or someone else's, we have a few methods. The primary method is to get the data directly via its CTID. So that's basically just taking the CTID, putting it on the end of a particular URL, throwing that into a browser or into some kind of a request from your software that will get you the JSON LD record for that resource directly. That requires no registration, no login, no API key, nothing like that. It's open and it's there for anyone to use. The next one we have is the search queries via the search API, which is a fairly powerful graph search API that allows you to find data based on what it is, what it contains, what it links to. It allows you to traverse as many layers of connections between objects in the registry as you need to traverse in order to search and filter and sort your data down to get to whatever it is that you're interested in. The next one is the download or import for offline use. So we have a number of partners who are not interested so much in searching the live data as they just want to get essentially everything that's in the registry. Oftentimes that's if they want to integrate it into stuff that they have in their own systems. Maybe they've got some additional data that they don't want to put in the registry, but they do want to bring registry data into to enrich their data, or they want to build their own search based on it. A variety of use cases for that. But we offer a means of downloading all of the data from the registry and then doing periodic updates for anything that has changed so that you can keep that large data set current. The last one on here is the Credential Finder. So this is the sort of human-friendly version of getting data out of the registry. The Credential Finder is a website that we build and maintain that allows you to see all of the data that's in the registry. It also has what we call widgets, which is, as the name may imply, functionality you can put on your website to have kind of a custom-tailored version of the Finder search on your website to meet certain use cases there. Next slide, please. And just to go a little bit further into detail about the search API, that was the second option on the previous slide. This is what the queries would look like. We're not going to get too far into technical detail on this, but the idea here is that one of the many features that it has is the ability to find things based on what they are, and within that realm, you can also find things based on what they are a subclass of. So you can see here that our search filter is saying, give me everything that is a subclass of a certificate. Or if you want to narrow it further, you can say, give me everything that is a subclass of an academic certificate. So if you remember that hierarchy of classes that we looked at earlier, if you want to find anything that is in some piece of that hierarchy and you're not concerned about finding any specific type, but you say, I want everything that is of a subclass of one of these types, you can do that as well with fairly straightforward queries. And then I will hand it back over for the manual entry demonstration.
Thank you, Nate. As Nate mentioned, there were 5 ways to publish credentials to the registry. We want to take some time and look more closely at the 2 more popular options that our stakeholders use in publishing to the registry, and this includes manual entry of a credential and bulk upload of credentials. For this demonstration, we're going to allow you to hear the instructions for how to add or update credentials in the registry. You're going to see a live demonstration of how to add or update credentials in the registry. And we'll be sharing in the chat a link to our credential registry guidance site where you can read the instructions on how to add or update credentials. So if you are new to Credential Engine or publishing, we hope that after this demonstration, you will be proficient in publishing a credential. And if you are a longtime publisher or partner, I suspect you may be an expert after this demonstration. So once again, I'm just going to walk through these and then we'll actually go into a live demo. The start and the end point of all of our options will be to set up and log into your credential registry account. This allows you to go in for your organization and add or update credentials or any other resources to be published to the registry. For manual entry, we have opportunities for you to enter a new credential, as you see here by this screenshot, where we will ask you the critical information that is necessary to meet Credential Engine's minimum data policy. The name of the credential, a description, as well as the credential type. All of the credential types that Phil just mentioned are available for you to select from when you are entering a new credential for the first time. And next to each of the credential types, including all of the new certificate types, there is a little info bubble that will pull up a brief description of what that credential or certificate means. I think we've shared in the chat the link to other resources on our website and our guidance website on where you can see the full list of credential types, including the new certificates and their definitions. An important component in publishing any new credential to the registry is that, as I mentioned, there are some properties that will be required. Once you enter that required information, credential name, description, credential type, and others, we encourage you to save that data because that's how you'll be able to refer to it, to approve, and for the Credential Engine team to publish. Once you've added your new credentials, you can go to your organization's summary page because you're logged in to our credential publisher, where you can very quickly select all of the resources, save them, and approve them for publishing. That will let the Credential Engine team know that they're ready to be reviewed and published. You can also enter new credentials by bulk upload. This is an excellent opportunity to publish more than one credential. So if you have 10 or 20 or 1,000 credentials, the bulk upload tool is a good resource to gather data and publish. We'll follow the same steps here, logging into your credential registry account. And you'll be directed to download a CSV template that will include all of the required properties to publish to the registry, including selection of credential types. So if you use the bulk upload feature, you will once again see that full list of credential types with those info bubble icons for more information. Once you fill out the template and save it, you are able to upload this file of new credentials, approve those credentials for publishing to the credential registry. It may also be the case that you already have credentials in our registry, and with the new credential type options, you may want to go in and update an existing published credential to one of the new certificate types. Process here will be also very similar. You'll log into your credential registry account and enter our publisher to do one of two options. You can either edit a credential that's currently published, or you can download your published credentials via bulk upload, make those corrections, and re-upload the file to be updated in the registry. For the manual entry process, this is quite easy because when you are viewing your organization summary page, you can see all of the credentials that are currently published, and there is a handy edit button next to each credential name that you're able to select, which opens up a series of panels. And under the credential panel, you will be able to find all of the new credential types. And were you to need to make a change to one of the new certificate types, they will all be listed there on the page. Of course, when you're done making any changes to data in any of the panels across our system, don't forget to click Save Data at the bottom of the screen. Then that process is similar to the manual entry. You will go back into your organization summary. You will approve. You will select all of the credentials that you have updated, and you will approve them to be published to the registry. And finally, if you have a lot of credentials that you would like to update to one of the new certificate types, you can also download all of the existing data that is published to the registry, make changes on the data file, and re-upload it and reapprove it to be republished. This process also looks very similar. You will be directed to your organization summary page where you're able to download information on your credentials. Once you save that CSV file and make changes, you then upload the data file back to the publisher, approve your credentials once again, and that will trigger an email to the Credential Engine team to publish your credentials with the new updated information. Of course, one final step in all of this process is if you want to see what is published to the registry, you can view our Credential Finder tool. This tool, as Nate said, is a way for you to see all of the data that's published to the credential registry. And by selecting the filter option, you can filter and search by credential type. You will see all of the new certificate type options as publishers start to make changes and update or add credentials using those new certificate options to the registry. I'm going to stop here and share my web browser so we can quickly go through what this looks like in a live demo. We have recorded this demo for you to update existing credentials in the publisher using either the manual entry process or updating existing credentials. So this demonstration will also be available to you after this presentation. I will do a new screen share for you here. And as you noted on all of the processes that we can take to publish a new or update an existing credential, we start by having you log in. When you're logged into our credential publisher, you'll know you're logged in if your name appears up here in the right-hand corner. To get to your organization's summary page, you select Summary and Downloads from the top navigation menu and select Organization, Summary and Downloads. I've done that here using Microsoft as an example. From here, we can do either of those two options to add a new credential or to change an existing credential via the manual entry process. To add a new credential, I would navigate up here to the Add New Bulk Upload navigation bar, and I would select credential from that manual entry option. Once you're on this page, you are now entering information for a new credential. So the system will direct you to record all of the required data elements seen here by red text, such as credential name and description. And as I scroll down this page, you will see all of the credential type options. Once again, info bubble icons to help you get a quick definition for what that credential type, including all of the new certificate types. Once you fill in all of this information, the Save Data button at the bottom of the screen is very important. And finally, once a new credential is entered, you go back to your organization summary page where you can select that new credential and approve it to be published. Similarly, if you want to update an existing credential from your organization summary page, you'll find that handy edit button next to each of the credentials. When you select that edit button, it will open up for the credential a panel of all of the CTDL terms that could be published to the registry. Those that are highlighted here in green indicate that there is data for this credential currently published. As I expand the credential panel, you will see that information is already filled out because this is a published credential, and I can scroll down the page to find credential types. And if I needed to change this from a certification to another type of credential, like academic certificate, I could make that change here, save the data. We would go back to the organization summary page to approve that updated credential for publishing. And lastly, I want to just quickly show that you can also use our bulk upload tool to either add new credentials or make changes to existing credentials. You get to that bulk upload tool by navigating to the Add New Bulk Upload menu in the navigation bar. And under Bulk CSV Upload, the middle column, you would navigate down to Credentials and select that. That selection will bring you to the Credential Bulk Upload page for your organization. And as we scroll down here, there are options for either uploading new credentials or updating existing credentials. If we select updating existing credentials, you will have the ability to download all of the credentials for your organization. I've already downloaded a file for this organization, so I'm going to see if I can pull this up. Are you able to see this file? I may need to do another share here just so you can see it. Let me do that here. Here's a file that I downloaded. Just want to point out here that if you are making updates via the bulk upload option, all of the information that you have published to the registry is in this file. And I can quickly find here by looking at the first row of information that one of these columns is specific to credential type. So if I needed to change all of these, let's say micro credentials to one of the new certificate types, for instance, I could make that change here, resave this file, and then go back into the publisher to upload that file. So I'm going to jump back here to our publisher tool. If I have made all of those changes, I just scroll further down on the page where I see an option to upload a data file. I'm also able to preview that file before I approve my updated credentials to be published. And once again, with all of these processes, we will always go back to that organization summary page for your organization so that you can approve all of the credentials that need to be republished. So that is my very brief step-by-step walkthrough of how to do this. Once again, you will have detailed instructions of this process available to you, as well as a demonstration that you can refer to. And of course, if you have any questions, please reach out to the Credential Engine team. You can always reach us at publishing@credentialengine.org. As we get towards the end of our formal presentation and open it up for your questions, I do want to connect back to something that Jeannie said at the beginning of this session, which is, as we have added new certificate types, it may be the case that existing publishers, whether you're a community college, a university, or a state agency who has published credentials to the registry, it may be that you need to update your credential types for some of your published credentials. The Credential Engine team has already looked at what is existing and published to the registry, and we have identified some credential resources that we believe would require an update with these new certificate types. We've identified a group of publishers that we will be conducting outreach later this month. And that outreach could include publishers who have used an incorrect credential type, or those who might be interested in knowing about one of the new certificate types so that they can remap to that new certificate type when they make updates moving forward. Credential Engine team will be reaching out to those publishers with additional information later this month, and we are happy to help you navigate the process of these updates. We now want to open it up to your questions and answers. And Jeannie, you might be navigating any questions that have come through the chat as well.
Yeah, we do not have any new questions that have come in through the chat at this time, Rachel. But if anyone has any questions, please, raise your hand using the hand icon, and we will make sure you get unmuted. Just so we're not talking over each other, or put your questions in the chat. We are more than happy to answer them. Rachel, if we don't have any questions, it must have been pretty clear.
I think one thing we can pick up on is Marilyn's question about where does a graduate certificate fall? And
Sure.
Thank you for putting in the definitions of the relevant certificate types. Yeah, as I was thinking about it afterwards, I was thinking it might be that there isn't a specific academic certificate that exactly maps to what Marilyn is wanting to classify. It might be that the definitions that we've got are perhaps too specific. That her graduate certificate doesn't fit within one of the levels that we've defined, for example, or one of the sort of subject groupings we've defined. So the possibility that's open there is, a graduate certificate is definitely an academic certificate. So you can do what I mentioned, which is to classify at the broader level, and then you can provide the information that the audience for the graduate certificate are, graduates or undergraduate students, however you so I'm not exactly clear what a graduate certificate would be, whether it's a certificate for graduates or a certificate for people who have graduated. But anyway, you can use the audience level to provide that specific information about the level of the certificate. So the combination of the broader classification and specific properties, I think, will give the precision that Marilyn is after.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Phil. There's so many terms in the CTDL that can be used to really have a really thorough and valuable description with the certificates and any other type of credential as well. So an audience level is one of the many. Okay. Rachel, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, and let me just check, sometimes I miss the hands raised, but I would think somebody's looking to make sure we don't have any hands raised. Just double check here. And if we don't have any questions, then I think we can go ahead and conclude this webinar.
Wonderful. Well, as Phil and the team mentioned, all of these new certificate types are available to publish and consume. Once again, if you have any questions, if we can be of any assistance, please do reach out. Our partner success team is standing by to help you. Please email us at publishing@credentialengine.org. And of course, here is all of the contact information for those of us who you've heard from today. We thank you so much, not only for the time and expertise that many of you provided as a part of the task group that Jared described, and also for continuing to allow us to meet all of your needs in making sure that information about credentials and competencies is transparent and available as linked open data. We could not do this work without you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks all.